I'm not being funny, but we've literally been giving an inch against migrants, especially for the last 20 years, and against trans people. And now you've got certain people on the left who are basically being like, "Oh, what we need to do is we need to give an inch again."
No, I know,
And you're like,
they're drawing the exact wrong lesson. So the way I look at it is a really good example. An advert that cut through in the recent elections, a Donald Trump advert. Donald Trump's for you, Kamala Harris is for they, them. You look at that and people think, what does that mean? That America's just this frothing at the mouth transphobic hellhole. That's not actually what I'd get from that at all.
"It's the Donald Trump is for you bit."
It's the idea that if you do not have a program of economic justice that lifts the majority,
Mm.
makes people feel that their lives are being made better, then it is easy if you then what Democrats do is basically like platitudes about minorities. It's then easy for the right to come along and go, "What have they done for you? Nothing."
They're
The
lifting up.
X, Y, these
Yeah.
minorities that you might not actually have a particularly favorable view of, but it's not actually about like you obsessively hate them. It's just like, oh, that's all they care about. Well, but I'm just happening to be some white guy with kids, but why? And what in America that really came about with the civil rights struggle and the racist backlash against it. What they did under Kennedy is they slashed taxes on corporations, and then the tax burden on blue collar Americans went up. And then you had anti-poverty measures, which particularly helped African Americans, Black Americans who had suffered violent structural racism and still do. Reagan and people, they used racist dog whistles like welfare queens. Basically, like, you're working hard and your taxpayers are going to these lazy, feckless black people who were going to demonize it. And the problem is the way the Democrats went about what they did, which is instead of getting the rich to pay more money, they reduced that and they increased the tax burden on middle Americans instead of coming up with policies which would actually lift and improve working class Americans of all backgrounds and whilst dealing with structural racism at the same time. And that really caused the kind of white lash or provoked the sort of white lash, made white lash win lots of support because the wages of male workers has stagnated now since the 1970s. And that's because of Reaganism. So the point I make is the lesson is not let's throw minorities into a bus. It absolutely should never be that. We have to stand our ground on that. You have to stand firm. Partly, by the way, because nothing's ever enough. You give an inch, they'll ask for more. They'll never be satisfied. What you need to do is we stand unequivocally by the rights, for example, of trans people, but we focus the conversation on economic justice. Because the problem is otherwise, what people are doing is depending on people's sense of compassion for minorities they're not part of, which they largely don't know anyone from, instead of appealing to people's sense of what are you doing for me and my family, and how are you going to improve the lives in which we live.